listening to Control Talk Now, the Smart Buildings Podcast.
With the man, the myth, the legend. Ken Smyers and Eric Stromquist.
Control Talk Now, the weekly podcast with building automation and smart building control news you can use.
Now, here's Eric.
Hi, welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending December 6, 2020. This is episode 385, where we talk about smart building controls, HVAC controls, and whatever else your goes to mind. The man, the myth, the legend, the bionic man, Kenny Smyers, wants to talk about. Kenny, welcome to the show. Big dog.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. It's exciting to be getting so close to the end of the year because we know 2020 was an abomination of bad news, and we're going to look forward all our mites to 2021 because we've got immunizations coming, we've got the Super Bowl coming, we've got some big things, we've got all kinds of new and improved digital presentations for our industry, and we're just going to make it work and get through 2020 and get out to 2021. We're green pastures and successful fields ahead, right?
Oh, I agree. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are undefeated. Could they go 16-0? That would be quite. I think the last.
They're not going to. No,
I'm going to. So I get my fingers crossed for that big dog. But listen, man, we got a great show lined up. We got the one and only Ken Sinclair, AutomatedBuildings.com. He's got some great stuff to talk about, buddy. So let's just hop right into that interview.
Sounds good. Eric, I'd love to. We have Mr. Ken Sinclair, owner, editor, and publisher of AutomatedBuildings.com. And we're here to talk about the December issue. Ken has been, he's got his finger on the pulse of our industry, and he's got some really interesting stuff. But December's editorial theme is Requesting Innovation. Create your request for proposal for innovation to procure the edge of the next wave. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Welcome, Otto. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Thanks for the intro, and thanks for helping us promote automated buildings. We do appreciate that for sure.
Well, next to Playboy, it's our favorite publication. So. we consider you the Hugh Hefner of our industry sometimes. So how's that one for a new one, Kenny? We got him now, Otto Hefner.
Yeah.
So,
well, actually, the joke is I don't sleep well at night, so I usually get up and write automated buildings until I fall asleep, and I think that's probably the.
Well, very cool. Well,
the roots of it.
Great. Title this month, Requesting Innovation. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, I think we're in a pretty interesting time that I don't know if you've noticed, but there's like a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of stuff that isn't the stuff we know about. So I think we need to kind of get out of our heads, as we use the term sometimes, and think like these born connected kids. And we need to figure out how we can gather all the latest kinds of things that are happening and try and figure out how that's going to relate to us. We're all seeing a bunch of trends. I'm sure you're selling more edge controllers. All of your dumb edge controllers keep getting smarter every day, and they have more power to do greater things. The cloud connection is there. It's how do we use it? How do people innovate using all of these tools? And it's very difficult to keep on top of that. So what I did is I kind of kicked back. One of the advantages of being in the industry for 50 years is you get to go back and do everything over again. So back in the old days of DDC, in the early days, I remember it was as chaotic as this. Everybody had their own system, and they'd come through the door and they'd have a completely different way of coming at this. And it was difficult to try and evaluate. This was actually before standards and stuff, so it was really chaotic. And we found the best method of doing that was to put out a request for proposal. And we basically would write down our mandatory requirements, and then we would have the people tell us how they would meet our mandatory requirements. And it just gave a lot more flexibility. What it also helped us greatly was it helped us learn about the unknown, which is a big part of what we're all struggling with right now. And the more we found out about the unknown, we found things that we really liked, we would then put them into our mandatory requirements. So the request for proposal kept getting stronger and basically took on a direction of its own that was unknown to us at the start, but we were actually able to kind of evolve with it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it's making sense, but you bring up a great, point, the unknown. So what would you consider some of the unknowns today that we're dealing with versus some of the unknowns you were dealing with before, back in the day?
Oh, okay, some big unknowns that we as an industry don't even understand at all. One would be artificial intelligence. Another one would be voice, basically using voice as a chat boxes and that side of it. The one that fell on us, probably the pushed by COVID, was the location services. We kind of knew we could do that, but we didn't understand why we had to do it and the speed at which we had to do it. So these are like unknowns, and we have people working on all of those projects independent of our industry. And so what we need to do is we need to put out requests so we can kind of gather some of these, great ideas and either make them part of our project or not. I think it's as important to gather this information and say, oh no, that just won't fit into what I'm doing, and to make that conscious decision rather than going ahead and making that decision without knowing that technology or that methodology is available. I always have trouble with that. Is it methodology or mythology? It's you never really know at this time.
Well, no, that's a great distinction, because think of methodology as being a method and mythology being, like you, a legend.
Or something that's unreal.
Hey, Ken, you said some really cool stuff in your editorial. I really enjoyed it. And you said that I spent most of my early life quoting and following my old mentors. It made me look much smarter than I was, but I can relate to the information to the what and why of what my younger mentors are doing today. But I like how you say you got a very positive theme going here. You say, my advice today is to share your thoughts in the medium of your choice. You will find kindred spirits out there in the unknown, and also follow my lead and seek younger mentors. But you need to be born again connected. And I remember when you said about being, digital natives, it took me a while to really understand the concept. If you were involved in our business before the advent of the iPhone or the smart devices or whatever, you basically were, you came into the business without the benefit of really and truly cementing, the understanding of digital and how important it was. And I think to your point, you said, to keep get younger mentors, because they're going to get you caught up quickly to the things that we didn't have in our generation. But you're saying that you watched the current war of 2017, and that was the electricity war between the Titans, Edison and Westinghouse and Tesla, to determine which electrical system would power the modern world. That is pretty cool. Tell us just briefly what your whole thought process there was.
Actually, again, dragging back into history, I basically headed off on this rant at Connectivity Week, I think in 2009. It was basically the first I'd kind of got my head around the current war. And I definitely believe that Edison is right. I mean, look around you, everything you're sitting at that you can touch right now is DC. It comes in, you basically AC comes into your house, and what you've got humming around you is a bunch of converters to convert that AC to DC. The whole concept of, if in fact we had evolved in a DC world rather than an AC world, fascinates me, because when we take a look at space stations and we take a look at Teslas and we take a look at boats, we take a look at RVs, anything that is off the grid, it's got completely different design, and it's basically deals with all of its own things. And energy is just one of those things it has to deal with. If in fact we had done that back at the early days, Westinghouse had got run over by a truck, or the politics had not grabbed the whole situation, and they basically found that the way to get votes was to basically string a power cord into these areas. That whole manipulation of politics versus maybe what might have been the best solution kind of really changed things. So now we have this grid system that you can see from outer space that's strung across our lands, and we have strip mines, and we have dams, and all kinds of this centralized energy that may not have been the best innovation, understanding now where we are. And to me, it looks a lot like the telephone industry, which of course was close to an invention by Edison as well, and Alexander Bell and Edison, all these guys at the turn of the century. These inventors just totally fascinate me. I wish I was one of them. Anyway, the basic what happened is they invented these technologies, but then when you innovate and bring an innovation out, it's a victim of the politics and the financial drive, I think, is probably the other thing too. And that was well depicted in the movie, that was always the problem. Everybody was starving for money to try and keep their concept going. So yeah, there's I find it really intriguing. And what I'm doing with all of that is I'm pulling that to a parallel of where we are right now, is that we have all of these radical changes that are floating out there, such as AI, artificial intelligence, and basically voice as a medium to actually control things. Just data science is becoming, data is everything. Actually, we got this article, the independent data layer is one of the articles on our thing by I think it's the youngest of the Frank family is Andy Frank. I think he's definitely anyway. So he's writing on that, and what he sees is just a total separation of our data. Like we've been talking a lot back and forth, and we've been saying that everything we're doing eventually results in data, and how do we use that data? So data is the new revolution. How is that all going to fit? And we're kind of at that same stage as Edison and Westinghouse, that we're kind of trying to figure out how can we best push this data.
Ken,
who's going to control?
You're saying so much, and I just want to highlight a couple things. First of all, the movie's a must-watch. I agree with you. The Current Wars is the name of the movie, and you've said it, but I think it involves reiterating, because I think most people in our industry are technically motivated. And what we learn from that movie, and I think we're seeing parallels all over the place, is the best technology doesn't always win. It's the best politicized politically, and where the money is sort of what you got to follow, right? And the other thing that I will say was, in that movie, fear was the primary motivator, right? So they were taking the worst case scenarios, and I forget whether it was Edison that was doing it to Westinghouse, saying AC would current, or the other way around. And it was
Edison. Yeah, he's driving the elephant.
Yeah. AC kills. Yeah, AC kills. So they turned it into an
elephants
execution system.
all kinds of stuff. So, and not to give away a lot about the movie, but I think that one of the lessons from that is the best technology is not necessarily going to win. You really got to follow the political ramifications. And I hate to say that, because that's the hardest damn thing in the world to do right now, is follow anything politically. But it just, again, great linkage, great connection, lot to think about, lot to observe. You're laying all the breadcrumbs out for us to find the cheese.
That's a great summary, Eric. Thank you very much. The other one is that innovation is built on innovation. And so some of the stuff, we're just starting to fluff up some of the stuff Edison invented. Like the whole idea of the DDC. Actually, I started poking around, and I'm just writing my next chapter, which is called Out of Innovation, which basically is, it kind of focuses on the importance of, it's not just the innovation, it's what we can extract out of that innovation and what we do with it, and the political and the financial things. But out of that innovation, I started poking back, and the LED was actually identified at the same time that Edison was working. It's just that the LED didn't grow at the same speed, and probably if the Westinghouse scenario had not played out the way it did, because of the tremendous political connection to the grid, that we could basically control volts. That was probably the biggest thing, was we can control volts with the grid. Anyway, that whole scenario is pretty interesting in my mind, how that it in fact may have been seen a situation that we may not have been so far into global warming at this point 100 years later. So these are kind of little twicky things that a little change in history could radically change. So I think
and a plug for our friends at AHR and Jim Young and the crew. I mean, not to give away a lot of the movie, but one of the big turning points was the winner had the biggest exhibition at the biggest show, which was the World Fairs back in Chicago, 1914 or whatever. Whenever.
No, 1893. And again, to Ken's point, it was an economic thing, was that Westinghouse brought his proposal in at about 1/3 of the price of Edison. In other words, it was in the millions back in those days. It was a whole lot of money. And the transmission limits of DC, the big showdown was up in Buffalo at the Niagara Falls area, where the waterways were producing power, and the power had to be transmitted as far as they could. And the way I remember it was that Edison got it to, he barely got it to the city of Buffalo, which was like 4 miles away, where the Westinghouse was able to transmit 20 miles plus, and you had 3 or 4 of the world's richest investors there. You had Vanderbilt, you had Carnegie, and you had another, the money of the world, and they were putting their money, their chips down on who was going to be the winner. And when they demonstrated that you could make money off of the Westinghouse version more so than you could the DC version of Edison, then it was all about the money. It was all about economics.
Yeah. Nobody looks at the half of the electricity is lost in transmission and creation.
Right. So, but you're right. I mean, imagine what you just said there, Ken, and the impact. Some 100 years from now, they might look back and say that the primary cause of the carbon footprint was Westinghouse and AC voltage. Imagine,
Actually, the funny comment is in one of the things where they're financially struggling, and they pull all the companies together into this innocuous company called General Electric. That was the highlight of the movie for me. It's like, oh, that's how that happened.
Right.
I heard about that company, General Electric.
Well, there's a heck of a story written. It's called The Devil and the White City, and it's one heck of a book. And it
Eric Larson.
It's a very strange book in the fact that it chronicles a serial killer, because so much happened in that time frame where you had this migration into the cities, and people were giving up the rural life and the farm life because the sustenance wasn't there, and so a lot of the females in the area were looking for jobs. They wanted to get into the city world, work as secretaries, and those famous secretarial polls where you had 40, 50 women just typing in polls nonstop, and so this serial killer goes through his share of this, and he finally gets caught. But it's at the same time as the World's Fair. Now, people have to remember that World's Fair prior was in Paris, France, and the big innovations of Europe were on display, and one of them was the Eiffel Tower. That the load-bearing strength of steel and whatever they built the Eiffel Tower with was an incredible feat, and they had to come up with something significant. And just choosing Chicago over all the other American cities that wanted it, New York, St. Louis, Baltimore, every city in America wanted to hold the World's Fair, because that was a very, that's when the Industrial Revolution was at its height. So they finally picked Chicago because what they wanted to do was drag everybody into the interior of the United States and then pull them down from Canada to show what the future of the world from the United States, North America, was going to look like. And Chicago was what primary, a major distribution point, was the beef stocking capital, of the United States. So it was to introduce economy and industry to Chicago, and a lot of people had to take trains from New York and from San Francisco to get to the fair. But then the irony was that they couldn't find anything to rival the Eiffel Tower. So they got an engineer from Pittsburgh. His name was George Ferris, and he created the Ferris wheel. And if you really read this book, go into the detail, the Ferris wheel is an extraordinary thing. It was a gigantic, monstrous contraption. Each cart could hold 60 people, and there was like 10 carts, and they powered it by steam. And the steam generation plant was like about 1,000 feet away. And they talk about powering steam to push this thing around. extraordinary story. But to your point, is that ironically, I remember seeing AB&B, they wrote an interesting article maybe 5 years ago about how Edison should have won the war, because all we're doing is creating massive AC, sending it, and then converting back to DC inside every building. And Eric and I had a very interesting, who was the person from Johnson that told us about those big batteries and how the whole world was going to run on batteries? Because
we were sworn to secrecy, Kenny.
Okay.
We were told that even with your CIA connections, we cannot divulge that. But
you're right.
Matter of fact, everybody that's listening right now, just forget that you heard Kenny say that Johnson Controls is going to power all the buildings by batteries. Okay, just forget you heard that here.
That's the story. You can't unhear something.
Yes, and
disinvent nuclear weapons, right? I got you.
We have a strict no edit policy. Just forget you heard that Johnson Controls will power. And you start thinking about the fact that you hook solar up so that it charges the batteries during the day and it runs at night. Yeah, I mean, self-generating, zero energy usage buildings are coming. And my guess is Ken Sinclair and Kenny Smyers. I mean, if we look sort of what we learned from the current wars, there's probably some political things that are maybe keeping that from happening sooner rather than later, right?
Okay, the other thing I want to make a parallel to, though, is basically where we are with data and basically online services, is because if you kind of got your mind around what we were just talking about, you might want to say, what the heck's that got to do with anything we're doing today? And I think it has a lot to do with what we're doing today, because we're struggling with the large software companies that are larger than some small countries and have more money than a lot of countries and more clout, and they have a global following, are basically starting to control and manipulate how our data is going to be controlled in the future. And we also then have a few government folks, and I get a big kick out of the people that are now worried about their security, which they should have worried about 10 years ago, and are basically getting their government people to get involved in controlling online security and its and identities and all of that. So I mean, we've got that mushy mess going on as well, and we're looking at things like disposable identities and all those things. But all of these movements are all pieces in that puzzle that are going to determine how we're going to look in the near future. Of course, the joke with anything with IT is that it basically moves at least 4 times faster than anything else in life. So in a matter of probably 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to see radical change. The electric car is like one of those radical changes that came way quicker than anybody imagined. And the whole idea of the grid and using batteries. Peter did a presentation to Monday Alive, and he basically talked about that. And in some of the places, due to COVID, the demand dropped off so much that in California that they were actually running on renewables. They had to shut down all of their carbon plants, and they were actually starting to manipulate their renewables to control the grid. So they actually got to see what the grid might look like in 4 or 5, 10 years, kind of thing. In an example that the demand dropped off, they hadn't anticipated, like how the hell are we going to get people to shut off 15 megawatts of power? Well, as it actually occurred, as did the freeways clear and those kinds of things. So the radical changes that came out of COVID are pretty widespread. But why I'm bringing this parallel up is I think we're living in the middle of history. So every time you make a decision, every time you take a look at innovation, and try and roll your mind back and have a bigger thought, and try and imagine where this innovation that just fell on your desk might end up in a 10-year cycle, a 15-year cycle, or even a 100-year cycle, because it all is relative. There you go, from the guy who knows nothing. When you describe the guy that moved off the farm because he couldn't make a living on the farm and came to the city, that's me.
But now it's funny because now people, based on what you said, and with the new technology, people that moved to the city are moving back to the farm because they can work anywhere now, which is kind of
actually, I find it intriguing that all of the young bucks, the young guns at SES that work for Brad and stuff, when I go to their houses or have any kind of interface with them, that's what they show me their garden plots out back and all that. Yeah, it's like, man, I moved away from that 50.
Well, I think one of the trends that we're seeing in the States, and I suspect it's global from what little I read about it, is sort of a distrust of government. So it kind of makes sense that, being able to grow your own food or have your own food is probably a better play than having a gun, right? If you're worried about things.
Yeah, actually, the other thing, of course, that accelerated that is COVID is definitely being billed as the accelerator, because everything that was happening is always happening, but it actually happens quicker with COVID. And that whole, where does our food come from? it got highlighted pretty quick when we couldn't move, and there was a concern about moving stuff and people. We couldn't go out for dinner, and all of that stuff. Then it's like, well, all of these inner cities there's no grocery store in any of these inner cities, so that problem has to be solved. If you have to walk to a grocery store. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to somebody over Thanksgiving from California. We're talking about the buildings and so on and so forth. And, we've talked about the repurposing before, but he was saying that there's a move now to, repurpose some of these buildings as like internal vegetable, growing farms, essentially, urban farms.
Grow-ups.
Yeah, co-ops. Where you just, convert the building and you'd have floors that would have the light coming in and you'd be growing crops or whatever there. So I think it's going to be fascinating because we've got to watch how we've adapted to COVID. And then it's going to be real interesting to see, because we're all going to have to readapt again once the vaccine comes out and COVID gets under control, right? So we won't go back to where we were before, but it'll be interesting to see where that pendulum swings, right? And so I think you're going to have to constantly be paying attention and, checking people like you out that got their ear to the pulse of what's going on and so on and so forth. But speaking of that, another great article in your issue pays tribute to Alex Trebek. And for our viewers who don't know who Alex Trebek is, Kenny, tell them. And Mark Peacock did a great article. And Ken Sinclair, maybe you'll tell us a bit about his article.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that. I like the way Mark, he parlayed in honor of Alex Trebek, about the long-time Jeopardy show, and 8,000 episodes. I love Jeopardy. I watch it all the time. In fact, the first game program I got with my Commodore 128 was Jeopardy, and I would create two characters, and David Lewis, they'd take all the hits and miss all the questions, and I'd learn.
Well, did you see the episode that Mark was on? Mark's a pretty humble guy, Mark Peacock, but as we know, he was, off Madison Avenue back in the days of the supermodels. But before that, rumor has it that he got his start when he talks about that person that won the most on Jeopardy in a day. That I think he's being modest, but I'm pretty sure that was him that won that.
That was $131,127. But
that got him a date with Cindy Crawford, if I'm not mistaken.
Most cash won by a single player to date was $4,688,436, and the show is shown in 33 countries and has the the most consecutive games won is 74. Imagine that. But what Mark does there is he takes he makes an analogy about our industry and about the questions would be asked about a built environment, building control and automation categories on the show. So question, who was the school teacher from Milwaukee and founder of Johnson Controls that invented the thermostat?
Well, you kind of gave it away when you said Johnson Controls. Yeah. I would say Mark Honeywell. Did I
and
get
I'd
that
say,
right?
You had to say Warren Johnson. It's not a complete answer. When was the modern light switch invented? But the cool thing about it is that, our industry really does have a lot of extraordinary history. And we're talking about, technology and innovation, whatever. This Mark's article does, kind of does a synopsis of the technology and innovation in our industry. So
dude, you're giving me an idea here that we should do. And Ken Otto Sinclair, you can get on this. But, we're all sort of dealing with COVID and the boringness of Zoom meetings. What if we had a Zoom Building Automation's Jeopardy show, right? We'd have contestants on.
Hey, I'm in. I like it. I like it.
I got a trivia question for you. Where was Alex Trebek born?
Canada.
Oh, good. You got it. See, it's quick. He's winning. And the show started.
Yeah, like I say,
I didn't know that actually. That's interesting.
I always thought of Ken Smyers as being more of a Price is Right guy, you know. And you as What's My Line, Ken Sinclair. But well, so again, great articles. Is there anything else that stuck out to you article wise?
Yeah, actually, just when you're talking about that, welcome to connectivity. I can't even say it. Stephen Dawson Hegarty, yeah, co-founder of Comfy. Would you remember?
Oh yeah.
Sure. So he's basically, I guess, kind of cashed out, and he's basically writing his own blog. So some of his ideas, I think, are interesting. And this is part of the new model of automated buildings, is that in addition to publishing articles, everybody's so busy and so off writing their own articles and maintaining their own blogs, that I've taken on the task of trying to, when a good blog comes across my desk, I actually link it to automated buildings, which again, from a financial point of view and a logic point of view, doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. But as an industry service, I think it's useful to try and pull together evolving innovation, and I think that's more important than anything else. As you guys understand, I don't do this for money. I do it because it's fun.
Well, but Ken Otto, I got to tell you, it's also brilliant. Kenny knows this, but I spent a lot of time studying with a guy named Marshall Thurber, and Marshall was one of Buckminster Fuller's disciples. And when I first met him, quality hadn't even got to the United States. The whole quality revolution. He was talking about Edward Deming was another teacher of his. So when I first met him, he was teaching the concepts of quality, and was actually on the team that when Donald Peterson brought it in and started, doing all the quality movement. And I didn't see him for, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. And, anyway, long story short, when I caught up with him, and he said, yeah, if you're not doing quality, you're not even in the conversation more. It's all about networks now, right? And he had spent like 5 or 10 years studying network and network theory. And, the rules in network are completely different, right? So you cannot defeat a network with power, for example. And he was working with some of the guys in the military back when, he said, you're going about it all wrong. The only way you can defeat a network is you have to infect it. So when we started, building farms and sending tractors and all that kind of stuff in the war in the Middle East, that was his doing, because you bring people along. But what he said about network, this gets back to what you're talking vis-a-vis. When he talked about the internet, for example, he said that really and truly where you create value on the internet is becoming a filter, right? Which is kind of what you're doing. You're curating things that interest your audience, which saves them time, right? The other rule with the networked economy versus the economy before was givers get. So the more you give, the more you get. Like, when Kenny and I first got involved in the industry, I mean, you hoarded your knowledge, because that was what you traded on, right? I mean, you knew it's something nobody else didn't. You can't do that in the networked economy. So the more you share, the more the network grows and the more influential you become. So your strategy is just absolutely brilliant, right? Because there's never a shortage of content, but be able to come to a place like automated buildings and where you've created it is absolutely a brilliant strategy. So I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you very much. Well, the other thing too is I have to read all of this stuff to determine what's kind of going on, and also, so when I read something and I say, wow, that's neat. Now, I probably the guys who are poking around the magazine. And the other thing too is automated buildings is a ball of string, and so we just keep grabbing these pieces of string and winding them all there. So it's a place where all of this stuff is been curated for the last 21 years. So, I think it has value of that. Every once in a while, somebody finds an article on there that's mostly me, because I'm the only guy that knows where they are, that actually kind of relates to what's going on today. So I think that's useful, just the documentation of our industry's history.
Ken, I think you're being very modest. I think that the automated buildings is the industrial portal for our BAS and HVAC and there's nothing to compare with it. Even engineering, engineering systems and some of the other big magazines have done a great job, but they're commercial. And like I say, yours is a labor of love, and there's a difference there because it doesn't have the sticky stuff. You don't have to sign up for this. You don't have to download this. You're giving all the carrots away without the stick, And as Eric and I know, what do they call it? Bribe, Eric, where you do marketing, you give somebody for something.
An ethical bribe.
You give an ethical bribe to get them to subscribe because you're trying to build a list. Well, over the years, we've watched how your site's grown. I'm looking down here and it says Who's Who in the Building Automation Network includes over 19,800 followers. I remember when it was 5,500. And I thought that was a huge number. I thought, my goodness, because this is an esoteric group of people. This isn't farmers, and this isn't bankers, and this isn't pilots. This is people involved in the actual space industry, not the aerospace, but building space. And so,
would you read automated buildings if you didn't have to?
Some of it I do. I found you by Googling something I was looking for information. It's like pulling a string, like you said.
Yeah.
And once you get into that big ball of string, there's other strings you can pull, and all of a sudden you pretty well. My biggest thing I remember as a sales engineer was the fear that I wasn't up to date with the technologies that we were competing against, and then I just had one version of it, for one vendor, one version, and if you didn't believe in this Bible study that they were giving us, that was it. And then when I found out, looked across to the other vendors and realized that holy moly, there's 5 different ways to skin a cat, or there's consolidation coming and things like that. I think we all have an initiative. We have like a kind of you follow the pulse. You look for new things coming. That's why it was such exciting development with Eric, where we were actually getting called. When somebody developed a new product or wanted to release something, we'd get the call first and I'd say, hey guys, what do you think about this? And any ideas? And so that's the only way to get ahead in our industry. There is no publication that really truly gives a fair, unbiased report. And I think so. What happened was your portal, you just kept taking people that you knew were qualified. You vetted the people to make sure they were who they were supposed to be. But whether it involved energy, whether it involved young guns, whether it involved integration or any of the protocols back then. I remember listening like in Ocean. I thought one time in Ocean was going to take over the world by storm, and then to watch it kind of find its different market, but not have that impression. There was just so many different innovations came in, they landed. And then they made their case day in court, and some of them have prospered and proliferated, and some of them have kind of disappeared, or not disappeared, but kind of find our niche market, like to include lawn. Lawn was an incredible story, that's come and gone. I think in a period of 20, 25 years, it'll still survive. There's still people that love lawn, but as far as the mainstream of building automation, it was like VHS and Beta, VHS 1, I think BACnet 1. And I followed that story through your website.
Actually, I'd just like to focus back on the 19,000 folks, because that's an interesting thing too, is when I did start this company, I did the calculation in my head. Back in those days, there was like, in every major city, there was probably less than 50 people in every major city that basically controlled the automation industry in that city. And so then what I did is I basically took that and multiplied it times the amount of cities, major cities. And that's how I kind of came up with the 5,000 number. That was my goal. My goal was to basically reach out and touch those people. So I was writing for those 50 people that were in large centers that basically understood what this magazine might be about. But what happened to me is that along my journey, we started, the internet was the first big thing that fell on top of us. And then some people started putting their systems on the early days of automated logic and all of that. The folks seen the power of internet. So then we started to collect a bunch of internet people who are basically focused on building automation, but their real roots are internet. And then the next one, of course, was the IoT, the cloud. And then the other thing that always hit us, the one that was a surprise for me, is as soon as I put this thing online, I ended up with somebody in Argentina writing me an email thanking me for giving them this information, because they had no idea how to get it, and they were trying to run an automation. company in Buenos Aires, and it's hard. So it's like,
Wow.
oh wow, that's good. So the global reach just surprised me because I didn't think of that. So that, if you take a look at that, those 19,000, you say, well, who the heck are they? I kind of poke around it every once in a while and try and take a look at that. And the international is amazing. I think particularly now, I think we still have more readers in India than we do in Canada. And Europe is a big one that is really growing for us as well. So yeah, that whole evolution, and we keep collecting. Every time we touch a new technology, we collect the specialists from that technology. The other one that is inside of that I find scary is I'm getting a whole bunch of folks that are listing themselves as in the building automation industry, working for Amazon services and Google and Microsoft Azure. And that's that feeds right on the article that Andy Frank wrote about the independent data layer. So we're seeing a separation, a migration of our data. We're no different than any other data source for Azure or Amazon services. So now they're poaching our people because they're trying to figure out why is this data different, and how do we basically sell data services to building automation folks. So anyway, what you're seeing in the 19,000 folks is an evolution of just our industry touching. So I thought that might be an interesting rant to go through.
Well, it is interesting, and I want to echo, because Kenny and I have been very surprised at how many people we have internationally that follow us. And one of the things that we've noticed over the years, and Kenny, you can add to this too, is when we go cover meetings for EasyIO or Johnson Controls or any place around the world, and meet integrators from around the world. First of all, they knew who we were, they followed us, but secondly, you find out that it's not a whole lot different in South Africa versus London versus New York versus Canada. I mean, integrators for the most part are all facing the same sort of problems and working with the same technology. So, I think our industry really is global and, very, very much alike in different parts of the world. Would you agree with that, Kenny?
Absolutely. I mean, remember we went to Paris and it was the EasyIO global conference, and we just came up with some exciting stuff saying it was global currency. Not only was it the same language, but when we went into some of those real fancy places, these old buildings, these beautiful buildings in Paris and in London and whatever, Eric and I would try to find the thermostats. We tried to find the HVAC acne on the walls, and look for the security cameras. Just kind of immerse ourselves into how they were controlling the temperature. And then Eric, remember you and your wife went on a little tour. I think it was in Italy or somewhere, and you were asking contractors
in Barcelona. Yeah.
Okay, Barcelona. Yeah. And sure enough, it was the same truck. And then my wife's German. And the irony of being in a family business of controls and distribution was that my wife's father was basically a steam fitter in Germany. He was a Klimaanlage und Heizungstechnik, and basically it's heating and cooling. He opened up the back of the truck and almost fell over dead. It had all these Danfoss valves, these self-op radiator valves. It had their version of the modulating actuators. I said, oh my God. I said, we do the same thing in America that you're doing right here. So I did get the, that thing, but yes, the global currency is the same, but the reality is that, the primary driver was energy at one time. And then it kind of shifted into the occupants, and into the experience, and to the relationship of the occupant in the space. And did they feel attached or detached? It seemed like the whole world uncovered this placebic conspiracy where they really didn't have any control at all over their space. And they were little, they were treated like they were in an aquarium and keep the fish happy, but don't spend a dime more, and that transition to, where the energy is still quite, obviously, critical, but getting those occupancy spaces occupied is the primary thing. I remember somebody from CB Richard Ellis, it was a heck of a presentation. he said, look, all you guys, you think your jobs are so important, and they are, and we rely on it, but we expect that. Like Eric always said, if you don't have quality, you don't have the product portfolio to meet modern requirements, then you're not in the game. So everybody has it. Now, how do you tell the story, and how do you interact differently to become differentiated and become the choice? And I remember he said that you could say that 330, 300 metric that we all became very fond of. He was the first one that said, if my space is empty, all this energy savings and all this talk is irrelevant. Help me get the spaces filled and keep them filled. Keep my building occupied, and we'll be best friends.
That's a great analogy. I wonder what the new, instead of the $300 metric, it seems like we need to come up with a new one because the new variable, like you say, is getting people to come into the building. So maybe there's got to be like a 330, 90, 95, where 95 is like, 95% occupied or whatever, because that seems to be really the driver right now. Because to your point, if they don't have people in the building, the rest of it's a moot point.
Yeah. So there's new metrics coming. What do you think, Ken? We'll come up with the automated building metric. Metric.
Yeah. Right. No. I hear you. And definitely needs revisiting. The one I wanted to just jump in, but was what you were talking about was really interesting as well. So I didn't want to break up your thought. But back to this global thing, and I want to tie that back into my request for innovation and basically what we can get out of innovation. I remember being in Singapore with Anto at one of his connectivity weeks, and that was the first time in the back rooms I met the folks that were putting together EasyIO. And what basically happened there, I think, is we had basically American innovation in tritium. Basically, tritium was traveled out into Asia, became a tremendous success. The other thing I found interesting at that time is a lot of the things we were doing here in North America, we kind of were just, fighting with them. All that BACnet would be a great example of that. When you went to other countries like Australia and stuff, they thought, well, BACnet's a great standard. We'll just do it, and they just did it. They didn't question it. They just went ahead and did it. And I think actually what happened there is with the tritium got trawled over Asia, and then folks like EasyIO said, wow, this is neat stuff, but let's build on the innovation of tritium and fix some of the barriers that might be in that system. So I think that's kind of how you see some of this stuff evolving, and that's what I'm kind of talking about, is innovation begats innovation, and basically throwing it into an arena where there's completely different thought and different folks and different markets and how they bring to market is the strength. And we have the ability to have these global conversations now. And I think that's really important to our evolution. But it also, I think, we have to be very careful, because what we're doing, some of the stuff that's getting etched in stone, or software etched in stone, whatever, is going to really affect our future. So I think we have to think a lot more about how some of this stuff is unrolling, how the evolution is occurring, how innovation is being presented, how it's being manipulated and controlled. I think is probably even a greater concern. Sorry, a little different point, but didn't answer your question, but went another direction.
That's a great
No, I certainly get it. You had another great contribution this week from Mr. Mamori. Lost his name here for a second.
James McHale.
Yeah, James McHale, there it is. Okay, but he wrote a nice little summary about again, because we keep talking about COVID-19 and the impact of whatever, but I liked he broke it down into three summaries: building flexibility, office flexibility, and worker flexibility, and how we're going to come up with a whole new outcome on the ability for buildings to be flexible, offices and workers. I think it begins with the workers feeling like they can come back in. There were some recent surges here back, kind of setback the COVID-19 progress we're making. Now, obviously, they're talking about immunizations finally reaching, into the into England's world first, I think, and in America too. By December 15th, we're supposed to get 20 million vaccines. And by February, we're supposed to get 100 million vaccines. So that means people now are going to have that worker flexibility. If they're immunized, they feel confident. They want to come back to work because there's been another great release of information. And again, it ties into one of your posts, the Delta Group company. They had their virtual 2020 virtual summit. But in one of their sessions, they were talking about some of the ramifications and some of the setbacks. Like the American education system is saying that the American students now are 25% behind. The remote learning is a great concept. It's been a great substitute, but it's not delivering goods. It's falling behind because of the ability to make the students stay on top of the remote. There's no reinforcements, and they're starting to dwindle, and they're starting to feel as though we're losing ground educationally. Well, the same thing with the way the Delta guys say.
Can I just comment on that on the moment? Because we're losing ground in the minds of the education system. But is that maybe our problem? Is the education system has the things they're actually rating as we need to know is stuff. Some of our education systems are saying you need to know this because 50 years ago we needed to know this. They haven't let go of their mind. They haven't had to see that we have to think differently. And
sure, they're business.
We have to be
too.
connected, and that's our whole education system is just wrought with that. I mean, we need to
absolutely. It's an industry. It's an industry with unions and with professionals and lobbyists, and they've got their interests to protect for sure.
Universities are built on people who go to university that never leave. They've never worked in the real world. Don't get me started on this one.
Okay, but what we're seeing, and with I mentioned the Delta was that they're talking about Airbnb's down 95%, Uber's down 73% of their business, and what an impact are they going to survive? But the point is that there's some extremely important reasons why you go back to the office or the corporate environment. And they're finally coming up with enough information, and they've got a chance to mull through all the good, the pros and cons or whatever. And I think there's a real strong conclusion that corporation presences in their corporate offices, while they'll be minimalized and they'll be optimized, and efficiency and everything else, and remote connection is not going to go away. There's still serious values in the getting in people into a corporate environment. The mentorship, the dissemination of information, the human competitive spirits rouse and whatever, the feeling of independence runs out, the ability to sustain work efforts if they're not supervised. So these things are now coming in. So we're going to see people that are going to become more proponents of going back to the buildings that they own and that they've invested in to bring their people back in.
I think mostly married people are going to want to get back, regardless of all those other great benefits you gave. So, Kenny, I think this is a really great positive up note for us to end this week's interview with Ken Sinclair, Ken Otto Sinclair. The December issue is out. Be sure to check it out. Ken, I thought we came close to solving all the global problems on this episode, but can you come back in January and we'll I think we can probably get it nailed in 2021. I think we'll get it all figured out. What do you think?
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good. Everybody's looking forward to a better 2021 than
Me
2020.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and go Steelers.
Yeah, and go Steelers. Go Steelers. Well, listen, Ken, thanks so much, man. All the best. Give our best to Jane, and we'll see you in January.
Okay, sounds great. Best of the
Happy holidays,
season to you guys and yours.
Kenny Smyers, is always great talking to Ken Sinclair. Dude, I love that guy because he keeps up with what's going on. He's just got such a curious mind, and we're lucky to have him in the industry.
Well, I agree. He reminds me of the Ever-Ready Bunny that the commercial just keeps on drumming because you know what? He's already told us what he's got coming in January. And it's already interesting because these things are connected dots. These aren't random, just throw it out there and see if it sticks. This is painstaking tracking of what's going on. And he's got some great contributing editors. And it's just, again, it's the consolidation point. It's the industry portal, like Controltrends. It's designed out of, the goodwill he has. Like you said, it wasn't a profit motive. It was an industry can we do this? Can we bring things together quicker, easier, and get collaboration done at a rate that benefits everyone individually, every business, and then, basically, I think it has impact, like you said, globally. There's a lot of people interested to hear what he's got to say every month, and we love to be part of that.
Right. Well, and look, we took Thanksgiving off, so we want to just wish all our community a happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, man. When I think about what I'm thankful for is, man, just this experience, getting to know the great people in this industry. Our friends like Mark Peacock, the young guns, Aaron Gorka, Brett Burrows, and just some of the great people we've got a chance to meet and know. It just makes it a lot of fun. But buddy, listen, man, I know you and I got some Christmas shopping to do, so I think we just call this one cookies. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea, Eric, and love those Falcons. They're coming back, baby. They're going to make the playoffs, right? Wild card.
We'll see. Well, if we're in the East, we'd be way ahead. But Mark Peacock's so happy because I think the Giants are going to win in the East. So. And Jay Renaui, I'm so sorry about your Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah. But anyway, no, man, that's got to be tough. And, I can commiserate with the Eagles fans because the Atlanta Falcons have been feeling that for years. So
I watched that game. That was one of the most pathetic football games I ever saw because Wentz is such a good athlete. I like him. And then to just watch how they just – man, they didn't know if they were coming or going. They didn't know.
I think they've got a lot of injuries, and man. But this gets back to the economics of the game. I mean, you spend all your money, and then you can't buy offensive linemen, you can't buy skilled players, and
right,
dude, it's football. When they say it's a game of inches, I think that gets back to the difference in the level and talent too. I mean, Philadelphia's got a lot of talented players, but you got to put it all together. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do. So
I think it used to be a game of inches. Now it's a game of dollars.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well said, Kenny Smyers. There you go, buddy. All right, big dog. Well, listen, let's say goodbye to our audience. A special thanks to our guest this week, Ken Sinclair, AutomatedBuildings.com. The December issue is out. Check it out. With that, remember, be bold, stay in control, stay healthy, and make sure to buy your significant other a really good Christmas gift this year.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers. All right. I'm thinking one of those things where